Everybody would join me in a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the sun and all that it brings us, even on days when it does not manifest itself directly. We thank you for this wonderful collection of experts who have brought the sun to our church. We thank you for the opportunity for fellowship, and we thank you for the rain which cuts the pollen. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Today we have a long-awaited group of experts, and just the size of the group tells you how complex this project of bringing solar onto our roof was. And I will now turn it over to Linda Koske as the chair of our property management lay ministry, to introduce all of our various speakers who had all of them interesting and important pieces. I learned more just from the dry run for this session than perhaps almost any other session. This is really interesting.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Adult Ed. Our theme for today, a bit tongue-in-cheek and a bit literal, is Here Comes the Sun. In the very beginning of time, God created all that is and proclaimed it good. And then God instructed us to cultivate and care for creation. Those passages in Genesis are our mandate as people of God to cherish and protect the beautiful and bountiful planet with which we have been gifted. Today, we're going to focus on some of the nuts and bolts of how to do that using solar energy. We'll talk about how we are doing that as a congregation, how we can do that as individuals, and create an environment which nurtures renewable energy. Over the last 12 years, our congregation has worked diligently to improve its environmental posture, improving the energy efficiency of our lighting and HVAC systems, and tightening our building envelope with better insulation and thermal pane windows. A lot of kudos go to our facilities manager for his diligent work in that direction, Reed Beltran, as well as to this congregation, which raised a substantial amount of money to insulate our roof and replace our old 1950s single pane windows. We reduced our carbon footprint by more than 50%, but we continue to draw electricity from the regional grid. Harnessing the power of the sun to power this building had long been a goal for us, but one that seemed out of reach until last year. Today, we have with us representatives of the groups that helped us reach that goal at the end of last year. Julia Novi, a project assistant with Interfaith Power and Light, joins us. IPL is a nonprofit that educates and assists faith congregations in becoming better stewards of creation. It was IPL that first introduced us to the concept of power purchase agreements, which we use to finance the installation of the solar energy field that is now on our roof. Jordan Taylor, and who's here in person, and Sydney McCabe, who's online, are associate directors for renewable energy with Montgomery County Green Bank. Green Bank's a nonprofit that leverages capital and fosters partnerships to promote sustainable energy projects in Montgomery County. It was the Green Bank that introduced us to solar installation companies, including Aurora Energy, helped arrange financing for our project, and counseled us along the way. Corey Jacques, a construction manager with Aurora Energy, is here. Aurora is the company that designed and installed our solar system. And Frank Murray, a project manager from Skyview Ventures, will explain the process we went through. Skyview is the company that financed our installation and will manage and maintain the solar energy field over the life of our contract. We'll start with Corey, who will explain how solar power works. Jordan Taylor will explain how Green Bank assists both institutions and individuals with renewable energy projects in Montgomery County. Frank and Corey will describe the design, installation, and financing process we went through, with some pictures from our projects and figures showing our savings to date and projected over the life of the project. They'll also explain some options for participating in solar installations off-site. I'm happy to say that I think many of you know that our solar installation does not cover all of our energy needs, although it covers close to 90%. We're expecting to participate in a community solar project, which they'll explain, which will knock 10% off the rest of our electricity costs. And Julia will share what Interfaith Power and Light has learned from working with congregations who've gone solar, what the accomplishments and challenges have been, and what we all can and must do to create a culture that fosters the transition to renewable energy. Corey?
All righty, good morning, everybody. I think an interesting way to start this off might be to just show you exactly what it is we're looking at right here. So, I may. This is the site analytics for Bradley Hills this morning, this lovely rainy morning that we have out here. It's only just shy of 9:30 and we have already generated, let's see, where is that? There it is. 5 kilowatt hours, which is just about as much as this laptop and projector and speakers have used so far in this meeting here. So, you know, even when, as Steve said, when we don't manifest it, we can still feel it through the uses that we have. So what we have, obviously, is a solar system up on this roof. So far, the life of the system has generated nearly 30 megawatt hours of power since, you know, we brought the system online and got approval for PEPCO. If we go and look, oops, that's the wrong one. There we go. So what we have on here are 264 solar panels. We've got 3 large inverters and just shy of 100 kilowatts of potential production for the site. Now, what does that mean? So in essence, when we have the sun shining, you have photons of energy coming down from the sun. They leave the surface of the sun. 8 minutes later, they get down to the surface of the earth. And if we've done everything right, then they will hit a solar panel. I got to move this out of the way. Okay. So I am not sharing the page. Let's see. Yeah, do that one now. Okay. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
A little bit better. So the photons make their way down and hopefully hit one of these panels down there. And a solar cell is, much like most of the technology we have today, a silicone device with an imperfection for a positive and a negative charge on either side of it. So a photon hits one of these solar panels, hits the cell, and that causes a little tiny bit of current. The same thing that's running in all the wires in all of our houses. And that current combines through a whole bunch of these cells inside of the panel, runs through the cell, picks up enough current to be worth something. We put a bunch of those cells together. In this case, the panels on our roof over here at Bradley have 144 of these cells in them. And then you tie all of these cells together, and before you know it, what's essentially just a little static buzz is almost 100 kilowatts worth of power. Enough to, on a good day, when we're not, you know, dealing with the clouds and the rain, run most of everything that's running during this in the school, for the computers, the TV, the speakers, the organs, everything can pull from that power. Anything that's not being pulled from this power that's being generated on the roof, PEPCO makes up the difference. And then if everyone decides in the building for a nice sunny day, hey, we don't need the AC running, we're gonna turn off the computers, all of that energy goes back to PEPCO through the grid to be used by your neighbors, the houses here, the other buildings, and PEPCO credits all that energy. So when it's nighttime and we go to use more energy, we just borrow back from what was put back onto the grid.
Just to make sure that everybody is oriented, that's the sanctuary with the white roof at the top. Covenant Hall with the gray roof in the center, and all of the solar panels are on the library wing, the education wing, and on top of Memorial Hall.
Which are all the flat areas of our roof.
Yep.
The panels actually have about a 5% tilt, which you can't see from here or from the street, but they're up there busily at work.
We can.
So go to Google Earth and you can see it for yourself.
So this was our lovely team of installers getting everything prepped up on that roof. The first step after we get everything up there was to build the racking that goes into the construction. In this case, it's a ballasted system, which adds a little bit of weight to keep the panels from being blown away during hurricane season. All of these trays get filled with just basically bricks that stay lifted off of the roof. As you can see, each one of these supports has a little slip sheet underneath of it to give a nice padding for that lovely new roof that everybody got installed in this building to help protect it. So all of the system is weighed down, except where we need to, in which case we had a nice roofing company come out and install these professional attachments to the roof. So we have about 5 or 6 of those throughout the entire system, just as an extra precaution for when hurricane season comes through and gets real bad. But underneath each of these panels, you see we have a positive lead and a negative lead to carry all of that cumulative current from the cells. They run into these little communication boxes, which every 2 panels have one of these just to enable the system to be compliant and monitored. And as you can see here, here's our wonderful team installing those boxes and wiring them all together. It was a wonderful challenge to go through almost 300 panels and get all these wired up and testing correctly. But at the end of the day, everything is running as it should, and everything combines. Let's see if I can zoom in any further. Right here. And you can actually see these boxes from the roof right here. These are our 3 inverters. And all of these panels pull in just a positive and a negative wire all the way into a series of input terminals in these boxes. These boxes connect to what is essentially just another distribution panel on the roof and tie in to act exactly like the utility grid for anything in this building that's pulling current. And that's the magic of what's going on up there. We had a nice drone come up to take this picture, but give it a few more months, I think, and Google Earth should have this view as the satellite view too. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Corey. Jordan, can we turn to you for an explanation of the role Green Bank plays in moving Montgomery County forward?
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. All right. So you guys hear me? I hear the mic.
The mic is over there.
Okay. All right. So thank you guys. I'm Jordan. I'm with the Montgomery County Green Bank, and we also have Cindy McCabe on as well. And so we are happy and very excited that we've been able to assist with financing this project. We actually work frequently with Joelle at Interfaith Power and Light, who again was the initiate of starting out this project. And so we work with a lot of faith communities, nonprofits, for-profit businesses throughout Montgomery County to finance their renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects. And so we're a 501c3. We are actually chartered by Montgomery County. We got our funds through the Pepco Exelon merger. And through those funds, we are deploying capital into these projects to make projects that have traditionally not been feasible, more feasible into the market. Where private companies and organizations may not necessarily take on making investments into like our faith communities. That was one of the places that we really enjoyed taking charge and working with groups like Interfaith Power and Light, and then also Skyview and Aurora. We specifically selected them because of their work with the faith communities. They actually do a really great job of handling projects of this size and scope with the quality of installation and with their quality of service to our community, because we want to make sure that we are giving all of our constituents a really good experience, and so that there is no issues with transitioning, because I know a lot of times it can be very difficult, very confusing, a lot of things going on. We actually love working with these groups because they provide a really great education in hand-holding and walking our faith communities through this process. And so our focus ultimately is to build a very diverse ecosystem of renewable energy developers, groups and organizations that are supporting cleaning up the electricity grid. Montgomery County has a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2035. And so we are doing our best to be able to support that transition. And so by doing that, we actually bring capital from outside of Montgomery County, investors, contractors, engineering organizations into Montgomery County to focus on building up these projects, which ultimately provides a better economy, more robust economy, but then also a very clean economy and environment. And so in essence, the focus areas that we have for the Green Bank are for carbon emission reductions. So anything that can overall reduce the amount that we're emitting and polluting the air is what we tend to focus on. And so if you are doing anything like installing a solar system, that's one of the easy ones to think about. But there are also many other systems that we use to reduce overall carbon emissions. Some of those are geothermal systems, battery storage systems as well. Not every solar system has storage baked in, but sometimes those are appropriate systems to include. And then outside of generation systems where they're producing electricity, there are energy efficiency measures as well. And so for new windows, adding insulation, improving your electrical system, replacing things like water tanks, boilers, chillers. Think of anything in your home that consumes power, and especially consumes power at a high rate. We actually will finance the renovation, repair, or updating of any of those systems to higher energy efficient systems. You typically want to look for Energy Star rated things. Those are a great opportunity to be able to reduce the energy consumption of the systems in your home, as well as in your buildings and schools. And so, again, we work with faith communities, we work with nonprofits, but we also do work with individuals. We work with them through our contractor network. So if you go to the Green Bank website, you can actually find a list of contractors. So if you are interested in getting solar for your home, maybe you're interested in getting battery backup, or some of you guys may have EVs. I did see EV out in the parking lot, and you want to install an EV charger. We actually have assistance programs, one to just be able to assess the building's needs, because we want to say, hey, what do I have to do first? What is going on with my building? That's typically the first place that you want to start. And then after we know what let's say the worst areas in our home or building are, those are some of the first places that we'll want to target. And so the contractors, we already work with a majority of contractors. If you've seen any renewable system in Montgomery County, likely we played a part in getting those out into the world. And so they'll reach out to us, and we provide a very low cost of capital to be able to help bring these costs down, make it more affordable for consumers and for our organizations to be able to make it make sense. We don't want to put anybody out. We should never be spending more money to go solar or to clean up the environment. But we do have a big job ahead of us to make sure that we are doing our best to save it. And that's what we're here to do. So if you guys have any questions for us regarding any groups or affiliations that you guys are associated with, maybe your condo association, if you guys are part of PTAs, if you guys are part of even your work groups, those are opportunities for us to come in and do lunch and learns. If you want to do it at your community, if you have community associations or civic associations, and you want me to come out and speak to all the homeowners that are there to tell them about their options for converting to solar, or maybe people are interested in getting a geothermal system and they want to learn more about it. Maybe people are interested in getting new windows and doors because they have a leaky house. We can talk about all of that and figure out options to be able to reduce your costs and help make the environment cleaner. So really appreciate you guys for having us, and I'm going to turn it over to Frank from Skyview.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. A little bit about Skyview. Just want to let you know. Oh, that's not Jordan. Thank you. So Skyview Ventures, we're the commercial solar developer. We own and build solar projects. So we overall will be owning the system that's on your building, and we have an agreement in place to own and operate that. Skyview Ventures itself is really, its real mission is to invest in renewable energy and really help carbon emission reduction. So by doing that, a good portion or a leg of our business is in the solar development side that we build. We also do EV charging, and we invest in other startups for renewable energy, smaller companies that need help. We're here to help them. So the real kind of good and value part of Skyview Ventures is that, we're 100% dedicated to carbon and renewable energy in the market here in the US. We're a small independently owned company, but we're willing to work pretty much anywhere that, we have partners that we can operate with. So attached to the map here, most of our projects we do is typically on the East Coast, going from Virginia straight through Massachusetts. We have some out in California, just some from trade partners and other areas that we've been able to develop with. The little map to the right is Washington, D.C. We historically have been in Washington, D.C. just because of the market that's there. They're very favorable, but in the last 2 years, the Montgomery County Green Bank has really helped change that, along with the rates in the region and also renewable energy credits. So, we will be adding to this map. Bradley Hills will be on there soon, and we have about a dozen projects in Montgomery County that are underway or completed that, so we are moving that direction. So, the total number of solar systems goes up. And a really unique thing about our company is that we build these systems to own and operate over the long term. So we're not just building it and turning it over. We have an individual asset manager that will monitor the systems on a monthly, annual basis and provide reporting just to make sure that they're operating. If anything goes wrong in the system, that comes onto us, and we work with our partners to do that. One of our partners, Aurora Energy, is one of our top partners, and they're located here in Maryland. So we partner with them to build these projects. And we have Corey and other individuals that are actually on site working to build these projects. So it makes it a lot easier for us, having a larger market, to work with regional partners that we trust. Next slide, please. So this I'm going to work with Corey on, but this is really, these projects take a very, very long time to develop. We go through an initial proposal, and I know that we sent that out last February, but Corey and his team were probably working on this months before. Soon Linda was working on this months prior. There's a lot of early stage parts that have to go through this just to get a proposal out that says, hey, how does this operate? What can we do? What can we offer? How does it look? We have to go through the initial design, and we have to do site assessments. Corey, is there anything that you do for site assessments that you want to highlight on this project?
So if you can kind of see that picture that we have there is a digital construction. It turns out a little differently than what the final system looks like. It's the wonder of technology means we have a satellite facing anywhere on the surface of the earth to get an idea of what you're looking at. But as soon as you get a boots on the roof out there, we stepped out of the roof for the first time, and we're like, hey, there's some divides here, and there's some vents here that you can't quite tell from the satellite. So we broke it up a little bit more, but you get a good starting point to get a good estimate for how much you're going to be able to go to. And then usually you stay around there. Sometimes you can add a little more. Sometimes you have to lose a few panels, but it's a good starting point to be able to go from and do a lot of the legwork before they send me or one of my coworkers out to actually get eyes on the surface for the first time.
Yeah.
Just
So
to
this is
give people, I'm sorry, Frank, just to give people an idea of the timeline, I think, Doug, you can help me. I think we first met with someone from Aurora in the summer of 2020 is my recollection.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
So that can tell you that the timeline for these projects is very long, right? Your initial stages to then, having agreements in place, then doing engineering and interconnection approval. A lot of these processes take, even just approval from the utility could take 2 months just to get that approval that says, yes, you can install, along with other permits, and then the time to coordinate the installation, the actual system to go up, the final inspections, and then the permission to operate from the utility. So the full timeline of a project like this typically takes between 9 months to 12 months after we have the agreements in place, just depending on a lot of the approvals. And it can take longer, but the initial stage, as you heard, could take 1.5 years prior to even bringing this design into place. So it's a long period of time, but it might seem shorter than it really is. So after it's done, I know Corey went through this, but would like to highlight it again. You're almost 100 kW in the system. And we expect the system to produce right around 112,000 kilowatt hours a year. Could produce a little bit more, could produce a little bit less over time. But that's a good range to say, hey, how much do you actually use? We forecast that this project should use right around 89% of some historical usage. I think you might have had some higher usage maybe in different years just based on the use of the facility. But that kind of gives you an idea of how much energy that this is actually going to produce. I like to maybe even note that, an average home might use about 7 kilowatt hours. So, this is probably 15 times greater than the average size that you put on your individual house.
And you can see that
Next slide, please.
5% tilt there as well in the picture.
Yeah, you can see that.
Oh, yeah, you can
Yeah,
see the
it's
tilt
really
pretty clearly here.
So the tilt is a combination of, obviously, we're in the northern hemisphere. Maryland sits at the 39th parallel. So as just a fun rule, whatever your latitude is would be your optimal tilt for your solar panels from whatever it is. So if you're at the equator, it helps just sit them flat. If you're in the southern hemisphere, you tilt them a little bit north. 5 degrees is pretty much what the industry said is good to get the most in the space, and also to let the rain kind of wash off all that pollen and stuff. If you lay them flat, you could cover every inch of the roof, but give it one spring and all of a sudden you've got a big mass of pollen that you're not going to get any production through. So
Perfect. So the real question is, like, why do we do these projects? I know there's a lot of environmental attributes is one, but also the energy savings that's going to be attributed to the project. So this little chart right here, if you look to the right, that blue line is a cost without having solar. So if you did not have solar at your facility, what would that cost be essentially on a monthly basis? And the orange line is going to be the cost with solar. So you can kind of see there's a gap and there's a little bit of a savings value that's in the green bar. Kind of say, hey, on an average month, how much can we actually save over that period of time? You can see the savings go up actually in the summer months, and that's a lot attributed to the amount of generation that's being provided based on the system. What's really nice is that we're able to offer a 10.7 cent kilowatt hour. So basically you're paying that rate for the duration of the project. Utility rates from Pepco right now are somewhere around 16 cents per kilowatt hour, give or take. So you're getting a significant amount of savings just based on the solar being on your roof and being able to purchase what's coming from that. That really translates to about $6,000 annually. And that number can go up or down just based on the other utility costs, but you're well below the market cost of what you would have been paying if you're buying directly from the utility over that period of time.
Yeah,
Do you like to
Frank, if I could just interject here, just to emphasize for people that contractually, we have a 1% appreciation rate annually, so our rate will go up 1% a year. The research, all the research that we showed shows that, like, at a minimum over the last 20 years, utility costs have gone up 2%. And I think in the last year, they've gone up significantly more than that. So over time, we expect that we will be saving more and more.
And then one of the things you want to consider is both the utility increase and then also rates of inflation. So those in two part, you're usually looking at about a 4 to 5% increase year over year. And so to be able to lock in or have a fixed increase is generally a way better option than just kind of being free to the market.
go back to that slide real quick, Jordan? Yeah, I'd just like to highlight the emissions on that. There's ways to look at it. The CO2 reduction of 80 metric tons, and also the emissions. I think that's good to note that, hey, this is equal to close to almost 9,000 gallons of gasoline consumed. So we're kind of taking that much away from being able to use the electric in comparison to CO2 emissions. No, Corey touched base on this, but this is kind of the realm of the energy savings that we would see from the system being produced. We look at it on a monthly or however we want to break it out, but you can see how the system operates over time. Since the system is turned on, there's been close to 29,000, 30,000 kilowatt hours of electric generated from the system, which is a great deal. And it's pretty comparable to what our forecasts were from our model. So you're looking at that and we want to dive into it more. I know Corey's on site. We can definitely go through that with more detail. Next slide, please. So a lot of people do ask, like, how do you get started? We like to, it definitely takes a long period of time. From us, there's different ways to go and different channels to go. My first, if you're Montgomery County, always reach out to the Green Bank first. They're a great partner and they're a third-party partner from us that will evaluate everything we're doing. But there's also other organizations such as Aurora, Interpower, Faith and Light. that you can definitely reach out to them and they'll definitely guide you in the right direction. What we like to do on our side is we like to understand how much you actually use on site. And we also want to know kind of what that cost of electric is at your building. That helps us model the project just to make sure it's cost effective. We can't or we won't charge you more than what you're currently paying. That just won't make sense. And we also want to know what the roof conditions are. If you have a roof that's brand new, great. But if your roof is 15 to 20 years old, it's probably not ideal for solar until you're able to have that updated. The next stage, we really go into contracting. There's different ways to do that. There's leases, there's PPAs, which you have, which you agree to buy all the power from the system. We'll look at that and what's best for you. There's different options that we can get into, but the best option that we evaluated for your building was a power purchase agreement, just based on the size of the system and the amount of load that you're actually using. Once we have that, we'll start working with Aurora Energy and other partners to do the designs and engineering, the interconnection, and local permitting. And we'll also then work into the construction phase, which we would be partnering with Aurora in many of our projects. I think there's at least 7 or 8 with Montgomery County Green Bank that we're working on to do the construction, installation, and get all the utility approvals and potentially even the operation and maintenance going on in the future. So I don't know if Corey or anyone else would like to touch on this slide.
I would just add something in terms of the contracting process. I'd put a prop in for Interfaith Power and Light. That power purchase agreement is a pretty dense and pretty lengthy agreement. I'm an attorney, but this was not my wheelhouse. I was pretty overwhelmed in going through that. And I had a couple of folks in the congregation go through it with me, but ultimately I reached out to Interfaith Power and Light. And they were able to provide an attorney who gave us some advice on a pro bono basis, which gave us a lot more confidence going forward. And Skyview was great in working with us on some tweaks that we wanted to make with that. And ultimately, I think everybody was very happy with the agreement.
Yeah, and I think that's great to know. Having organizations like that will help guide you is very important, because I know it's very, very overwhelming, especially if you're not in the industry. And they do review all of our documentation and your documentation just to make sure everything looks as intended, so you're not in a situation you don't want to be in the future. So I put up a little bit of the key terms and options that we really have. These are really the basics for commercial type projects. One of them is, we can lease your roof or land, and you earn revenue for that. That really depends based on how much energy your building uses and the amount of space that you have, and if you can actually use that energy on site. We decided for option 2 is where we have a power purchase agreement and you buy all that electric that's generated from the system at an agreed upon rate. We'll own the system and maintain that and look at that. So you only have to worry about paying for what's being generated and being used. You don't have any out-of-pocket cost to maintain it, monitor it. If anything goes wrong, it's not operating, that's 100% on. So we take care of that. We also give the option that if you'd like to own the system, we'll definitely build it for you and turn it over to you and help as needed. But you would own the system itself, and that's an option that you'd have to look into for your facility if that's something you want to look into. Option 1 and 2, the way that it works is at the end of the 20 years, we will remove the system at our cost to take it down. We do have the option to renew the contract for periods of 5 years, or we can sell it to you at a fair market value, whatever's best for you. But we're not sure how everything will look in 20 years, but if you can get a utility rate that's very, very low what you're currently paying, it might be an option just to extend. The age of your roof might be able to handle it, but it just depends on your situation when that time comes. So we do offer many solutions, but at the end, ultimately, Skyview would be removing it at our cost. So that would be at no cost to you. Next slide. Go ahead.
Just real quickly, to Lindsay's point, the PPA is what we typically see for our faith communities because it is a pretty comprehensive, easy button solution. More times than not, because the tax credits and incentives and some of the other ancillary benefits that come with getting a system are difficult for faith communities to get because they don't have tax liability. These are all packaged together and provided as a discount on your overall rate, as opposed to having to take all these tax credits. So you guys get these, Skyview essentially monetize these tax credits and gives you guys the discount for it. So it's much easier than having to do tax filings and claim all these credits and do these other things, which if you want to purchase a system cash, which you're able to, you still have to go through the process of collecting all the other benefits that come with it. This way, it just is kind of put together in one package and said, hey, here you guys go. So it's a little bit lengthy, but makes it easy. Like the most difficult part is probably reading through it. So
Thank you for that, Jordan. Yeah, just to put this in perspective for people, we did get, when we were interviewing installation companies, estimates of what it would cost for us to pay for this installation ourselves versus going through a PPA, and it was close to $250,000. So that would have been.
It's nothing to
Yeah,
say.
that was
really
So that would have necessitated another capital campaign on our part, or taking on more debt, which, as we all know, is difficult for nonprofits to enter into. So this was an ideal solution for us. No money up front. We get the benefit, and Skyview handles, and with working with the other partners, all the hairy details that we don't have to get into.
So just while we're still on the theme for the different styles of the installation, what's already here now, as I showed on the slides that I had on there, the infrastructure is in place. The roof itself is ready and able for solar. So in those time periods, I've been in solar for 10 years. We went from installing 220 watt panels as the top of the line to now you can get 500, almost 600 watt panels 10 years later. So having that infrastructure at the length, at the term of that contract, and saying we can go back and renegotiate, it may not be, oh, we need to reinstall a whole new hardware. No, the hardware is already there. We could just replace the panels, and now, you know, you've doubled the production possibility of this roof. So it's one of the neat things about these partnerships.
Can that happen during the course of the, was it 20 years that we have?
I would say you got to take that up with one of the people that's going to call us out there to do it, but I'm sure that there's some incentive there for, again, you guys have very nice panels on there. 370 watt panels for those sizes are perfectly fine. But you know, if 10 years from now somebody makes a quantum leap and suddenly we're making, you know, realistic
panels.
1,000 watt panels. Realistically, just for anybody who might be curious, the maximum amount of solar possible is about 1,300 watts per square meter. A solar panel is about 2 square meters.
Okay.
So realistically, if we get to that magic spot, you could be possibly looking at 2,000 watt panels in a best case scenario. But that's the kind of stuff that NASA plays with.
Yeah.
So
But if that's a question or consideration and it makes financial sense, so we're going to be lowering the rates further, you know, based off the cost and stuff, the panels. If that makes sense, just give us a call and we can actually go through that exercise. So I don't think that it's out of the question to do that.
Yeah, we do not own the panels. That would be a decision. They own the system. They would make that decision. We don't have any maintenance or anything. They're gonna, if they can make a lot more money on the roof, they might upgrade the panels. That's all on them.
So
Yeah.
in 10 years,
Mhm.
12 years, whatever, a couple panels fail. They don't make silica panels anymore. They don't make the 350 watt panels anymore.
Mhm.
It's 350?
370.
370, I'm sorry, panels anymore.
Yep.
Can you intermingle different types
To a certain
rectifier?
extent, you can. So ideally, you would find the same size panel for a standard string. What's happening on a
Same size
non,
wattage or physical?
basically you have to match the voltage.
The
What we're
voltage?
looking for is the open circuit voltage would be, you got to find another, not necessarily 370, but like even a 360 or a 380 that
Okay.
hits that same voltage. And, you know, you obviously would want to go from the same manufacturer to have the same curve. Essentially, they operate on what's called a multi-power point tracking curve, which lets the inverters read what it's getting based on the irradiance from the sun. So they're all hitting a certain amperage and running at a steady voltage.
Gotcha.
So realistically, you're gonna have warehouses full of these things for decades to come now.
Okay.
Because for every 1,000, you know, sites that we do with these 370s, there's already a new site, the new, you know, whatever, call it Apple, call it Amazon, who wants to put the Cadillacs on their roof. So they're paying for those 500-600 watt panels, which are, you know, that's quite an investment up front on there, because you end up paying per watt. And obviously the more condensed energy in there, the more expensive the panels become for that. So while, you know, the different companies, in this case, the company that manufactured these panels was Silfab.
Still fabulous.
Silfab, yes. So they will have a supply, and we obviously purchased a few extra panels to account for that. Now, the nice thing is panels typically don't just die. What they do is they deteriorate on a steady curve, where it's usually a 25 or a 30-year warranty on the panel to still be producing 80% or 90% based on which manufacturer warranty it is. So if it's, call it a 300 watt panel, just for simplicity, if after 20 years, we should be seeing 240 watts, just hit that 80% down there, all of them are deteriorating at the same rate, but they're never just going to drop off. Certain areas, they're designed to handle about golf ball size hail impacts. So, they can take a beating and they handle a rough install. We're construction workers, we're not dancing ballet up there. But, it's occasionally you'll find a report and an error will go out on a monitoring system and say you have a panel down. And you'll go out there, and more likely than not, it would be just the communication box might be malfunctioning. And then sometimes they could just be, replaced and get that swapped out. But every once in a while in my line of work, you do find, either, some kind of real damage that was done to it, either something very large was dropped on it. Occasionally you'll find bullet holes. It's just the nature of, the reality of where it is. But in that case, there is a supply of panels ready to go to swap those out. And then, 10 years from now, there will be a bigger supply of those 500, 600 watt panels to come back and say, hey, maybe let's, go up and above and upgrade the system.
I believe the Silfab panels are warranted not to degrade more than 0.5% in performance per year. It's a half.
Yeah, we use tier one products.
No more than 10%.
10%, yeah, right.
Can you speak up a little?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Frank?
Tier
Yeah,
one.
we only install tier one panels, which are made by notable manufacturers that have a low degradation rate. That's because we need to recoup the value of what the system we put in over a period of time. So yes, it can be between 1% to 0.5% per year based on the type of manufacturer, what they anticipate. But technology hasn't been around that long to actually confirm that. So we're using some estimates. If we do come into like 15 years and it says, hey, there's new technology we want to upgrade, then that's something we can definitely reevaluate at that period of time based on how the system's production. But yeah, so we use tier one. We use top-notch product because we needed to last that 20-year term.
Julia, can you tell us about this wonderful picture on the screen here?
Yes, so on the left is a picture of the solar system at St. Albans Episcopal Church, which was the very first congregation in the area to become solar powered. And then the map on the right is how many, it's all the congregations that we are aware of in the area that are solar powered. There's over 100 now. And part of my job recently has been searching for more. And I found a ton more that we didn't know about. So I find the map very inspiring. And if you click on the individual pins, you can see more details and photos of the panels and the installation and links to even more information about it. And got to add Bradley Hills to the map. I'm excited to add the amazing photos that were shared today and more details.
Why is the proliferation in the district?
So I can speak a little bit to that. DC specifically has, because they're limited in space, each utility company is penalized per area per district for producing or sending out electricity generated with fossil fuels. And that is what has constructed, is called the Renewable Portfolio Standard. And there are credits or RECs created per renewable energy system or clean energy kilowatt that's generated. And so the utility companies actually must purchase these RECs And because DC is limited in space, the price for those RECs are much higher than they are. And so a lot of projects make it financially feasible or easily financially feasible to build in DC. So it's very cheap to do it in DC because one, they're size restricted and they have a very high need, a high consumption in the district. So you see a lot of concentration there. But again, you know, to Julia's point, there are a number more that are going to go up and to the left in Montgomery County that we need to add to this map. So
Yeah.
Just to kind of bring that into a realistic sense for anybody out here. We've already generated megawatt hours on this church here, and being in the state of Maryland, each megawatt hour can be worth anywhere on the market from what the utilities have to buy them for. They could be anywhere from $40 to $80, give or take. So you're getting the electricity, you're using the electricity, and you're creating this alternative value that the utility has to pay for you. That same megawatt hour in DC is going to be about $400 in your pocket. So you'll get these situations where, yes, you've maxed out the roof on whatever the building might be. And then they come back and say, well, you know, this south facing wall is looking pretty appealing right now, too. 0 square feet, 20 stories high is like, well, you know, suddenly that makes some financial sense to go in and get that for those kind of SREC values. But the same is true for the commercials as for the residentials. So, you know, anyone who owns property in DC is very, very incentivized to go ahead and cover every possible square inch of solar feasible space with solar panels.
even unfeasible space.
Yep. I have my house. I've lived in just outside of College Park in Lanham in Maryland for close to 10 years now. First thing I did was I threw up all these panels. I had a big, 12 kilowatt system. It produces, just shy of about 14 megawatts every year. And if I'd known then what I know now, I would have bought a vacant lot in DC and just threw them up there and lived under it. I'd be a millionaire. But it's definitely as incentivized in Maryland as it is anywhere else in the country. DC just has that, that unique property of being 10 miles by 10 miles minus whatever Virginia chunked out. And that land is incredibly valuable for solar production purposes.
So we do have one question in the chat column, but before we do that, I wanted, Frank, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or Corey, to your part of the presentation?
No, I'm good, but thank you for the time.
Thank you. So Julia, if you want to talk about Interfaith Power and Light and your experience. You're the one there now.
Yeah, Cindy, are you raising your hand?
I'm sorry?
You're
Yes,
muted.
but I'll wait until after you finish.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Julia Novi. I am a program assistant at Interfaith Power and Light, and also, as you might have guessed, a cousin of Joelle's. It's so good to be able to join you this morning. I know IPL-DMV has worked together with this church over many years, most recently on multi-generational climate dialogues, and to support the process of going solar. I wanted to talk about the St. Albans solar system, which is on the slide. Joelle was there when they were installed, and she said they sent the youngest priest up to the roof with incense, and from the parking lot below, the choir sang hymns of praise. The St. Albans rector at the time referred to those solar panels as their newest stained glass windows, which, like their existing stained glass, proclaimed their values and their story to all who see them. And as you can see from the map, there are now many more congregations in the area that have gone solar. But with the urgency of the climate crisis, we need to accelerate the transition of all of our buildings to clean energy, and we should get the next 100 solar projects in this region's faith communities over the next couple years, not 14 years. So I hope that you will share with us and with
We have lost you.
You just froze up, Julia.
Wi-Fi.
Look, there she is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, oh, yes, I just got a notification that my internet connection is unstable. Hold on.
Sometimes if you turn your video off, it helps. Not that we don't want to see your lovely face, but it might be
I
better.
will try that. Where did you lose me? What was I saying?
About getting 100 more congregations over the next
Yes.
couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I hope that you'll share with us and with the Green Bank everything that you've learned in this process so that we continue getting better and better at supporting congregations in the process of going solar. And I'm going to share some of what we've already learned from the congregations that have gone solar in our region over the past decade. So the first thing is that the biggest challenge is not the panels, it's the people. As you've heard, there's so much support for the technical and financial aspects of all of this, and PPA financing means that congregations can go solar at no out-of-pocket cost and the risks and responsibilities borne by a solar developer. But everyone has to get on board. All the decision makers have to get comfortable with the idea and the technology and build trust with those proposing the project for their beloved buildings. So the most important thing we encourage volunteers interested in pursuing solar for their congregations to do is to meet one-on-one with every decision maker who will need to bless the panels, talk to them about solar financing, and address their questions and concerns in advance. Roof anxiety is generally unfounded, but the feelings are real and people feel protective of their congregations out of great love. So run towards the skeptics and curmudgeons and talk to them first. The next thing is that going green and fighting for stronger climate policy go together. Individual homeowners and organizations do work hard to go solar, but solar developers are only willing to finance these projects because of the context driven by local solar policy, which in turn reflects grassroots advocacy by folks like us. So DC has the strongest solar market in the region because solar advocates passed laws that have raised the prices of solar renewable energy credits to more than 4 times what they're worth in Maryland or in Virginia. And likewise, strong faith voices have supported campaigns to strengthen Maryland's clean energy law several times, expanding the solar carve-out to raise SRAC values. And Virginia has a mandatory clean energy law for the first time now because of the sustained advocacy of clean energy champions. And just last year, the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act in Congress raised the federal solar tax credit to 30% overnight, making solar panels more affordable for everyone. So bear in mind that individual or communal greening efforts take place in the context of policy advocacy, and that folks at Bradley Hills can leverage your experience going solar to strengthen your voice in speaking out for good climate policy. Finally, let your church's solar panels be true stained glass windows that shine out as a beacon to all who pass by and all who enter. Use this as an opportunity to invite everyone in this church community to shift to cleaner power, to go solar at home, to turn away from burning fossil fuels when we make choices about how to get around, how to vote, how to eat, and how to invest. Let this not be an end, but a beginning.
Thank you, Julia. Cindy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say thank you so much, Linda, Steve, Fareed. Is Fareed with us?
No, not this morning.
All right, well, he was wonderful in the project. I just want to say thank you to everyone who spoke. And I did have a question for all of those who are not related to the solar presentation. Does anyone know some other benefits to having solar besides saving money?
Saving the
So-
environment.
Obviously, the benefits and
Oh,
everything.
Corey, I'm sorry. Is that Corey? You can't answer. Excuse me.
Yeah, but I want to hear this answer.
Now, obviously, the reduction in pollution that's going out into the air.
Is that Steve?
Yeah.
Steve, you can't answer either.
I was just looking at the numbers.
So how does the solar system help the environment? Does anybody know that?
Anybody online? Just chime in. Can't see you.
Unmute yourself. Go ahead. All right, well, I'll go ahead and talk about it just briefly. This is my favorite part of the presentation. So the electricity that we use without solar in this area comes from burning fossil fuels or from nuclear power. And burning fossil fuels contaminates the air, it contaminates the earth. And so using solar keeps some of that pollution out of the air and out of our waterways and out of our soils and everything like that. So that's, I think, more important to me than saving money, and a lot of times more important to congregations who want to help the earth as their main priority. But other benefits of solar are extending the life of your roof a lot of times, and also reducing the amount of heat that is on that top floor of wherever the solar is, because the electricity, the heat gets switched into electricity and it doesn't heat up the top floor. So a couple extra benefits of solar I just like to mention, but most importantly, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Bradley Hills, for going solar. We appreciate it.
And thank you, and to everyone here for all their help and helping us get there. We have one question in the chat column about would solar flares affect the system?
So I saw that. Thank you, Alvin, for that question. I don't think I've ever been asked this question, but it's definitely something we've thought about. So obviously, in the last 150 years, the entire planet has transformed from going from basic mechanical at a localized to an entire interconnected, multi-technological grid that everything is running on some form of electricity. So a solar flare is part of the sun's natural weather, and the sun goes through cycles where it generates these large magnetic currents on its surface, and then they snap and they eject particles in any direction. And sometimes they fly in our direction, and especially when you're dealing with satellites, you have to be aware of that, because the Earth has a magnetic sphere. So if you've ever seen the pictures, and this is I didn't even think of this one, but Aurora Energy is who I work for, and the aurora is that gorgeous green glow that you get up in the northern and southern hemispheres when one of those flares hits the Earth's magnetic sphere and energizes all of that oxygen in the upper atmosphere, and it creates that ominous green glow that the old Inuits and native peoples used to call very spiritual and it was so mysterious. Now we have a more scientific explanation for it, but it's no less awe-inspiring and a testament to the power of it. Historically, there has been, I believe, one actual solar storm that the Earth-based grid got affected by. It was definitely before I was born, but I feel like it was somewhere in the 60s or the 70s where the power lines themselves and the electric monitoring companies noticed a significant shift. And it wasn't enough to say fry the wires. You would see an increased current in those same wires. But the best that we have now is the electrical code to keep everything well within the normal operating limits for anything that might happen. Certainly, if we had some kind of cosmic event, we can't much prepare for that one, but the grid is fairly protected against any normal solar storms that happen within the sun's weather cycle. So I would love it if we had a situation where suddenly all the solar panels are making twice the energy, but as far as a significant effect, you don't need to worry about any damage coming from the normal solar cycle. So we've got a few billion years left with our main sequence star. The best we can do is spend our time here, getting along with it.
So we have one last question. What happens when during Pepco outages?
Okay, so United American solar systems and inverters are manufactured with something that's called anti-islanding. So what happens is we're out there, the sun is bright, the system's running at full power, you're getting 100 kilowatts of juice flowing back through the lines, and suddenly the Pepco has a transformer blow or something within, I believe it's 3 or 6 hundredths of a second, the entire system needs to shut off at the inverters. So they have a constant monitoring of the AC, the alternating current, which is what the grid operates on, is being monitored. And as soon as it loses contact with that 240 volts or 480 volts for commercial, that the utility shows it, it disconnects from that. And it's a safety mechanism that's built in so that any Pepco workers that might be working on the lines down the way aren't suddenly taking that 100 kilowatts to their gloves and their situation. You know, it's designed to be an automatic process. It's also an automatic reconnect. So as soon as it sees the grid again, it's like, oh, I know this frequency, I know this voltage. I'm going to go back to putting all this energy back onto the thing. So for a battery backup system, that generation may not stop. It may just go to charging the batteries. And it'll say, okay, well, once the grid comes back, I'll discharge the battery's energy back onto the grid as well. And that way the batteries can discharge and recharge and maintain the maximum efficiency for the energy they have. But at the basic level of just you have solar panels and an inverter, it needs to shut it off so that the people can work on the line safely. And as soon as it comes back on, it takes the production, the instantaneous production, and starts putting that right back onto the grid. You have some downtime, but it'll come right back to it.
Yeah, I see that Jordan actually also typed a response into the chat. But so thank you both for that. So, so two things so that you know, we actually within the last year and a half purchased a generator that runs the basic security, fire safety, security lighting systems, all of that for the building. So that generator would kick in. But we have also ensured that the inverters we have are capable of connecting to backup batteries. So at some point, if we decide to install backup batteries so that we can harness that energy while Pepco deals with whatever's going on, we would be able to do that. That would be another investment, but I don't. And that's something we could talk to Green Bank about.
As a testament to them, just for the lack of a shout out so far, Pepco is actually a very reliable grid. And in terms of, I've worked with multiple utilities in Maryland and DC. Pepco's pretty top notch, even after the Exelon merger.
I've worked with utilities throughout the United States, and of utilities, this network is probably one of the better ones, and particularly Pepco is one of the most reliable. And as far as innovative, they have already a lot of these different types of systems that are already operational within their Pepco network. So
Pepco has really cleaned up its act in the last
Yeah,
10 or 15
They
years.
cleaned up their act.
Yeah.
well, after those fines and those hefty fees that
Yeah.
they got, you know, they got it together.
In my neighborhood, we can attest to that, the way they have whacked away unasked at a lot of trees in our neighborhood.
Yeah, but it's been a major difference, yeah.
And yeah, it really improved the system reliability. Bonnie's comment is actually worth noting here. Bonnie represents us to the National Capital Presbytery, which has 126 churches.
Yeah.
We reached out to invite other churches to this presentation today, and the unanimous response was, we got church then too, folks. So we're recording this, and we'll make this recording available to other congregations, because this has really been
Really
a
has.
terrific introduction
Yeah.
to all of the ins and outs of the decision-making process for a congregation and the financial and practical implications. And we are immensely grateful to Skyview, to Interfaith Power and Light, to Montgomery County Green Bank, to Aurora Power, for bringing this not just to the decision makers, but to the whole wider audience now, so that we have a good understanding of it. And we're very grateful to you.
Thank you guys for doing it, because we only live on this one singular planet, and we've got to take care of it. And we appreciate you guys for doing your due diligence and your responsibility to help us take care of it. So we appreciate you all too.
We can find the term stewardship fits very well with the program and the interactions that we've had. This is, I've been in probably close to a dozen multi-faith congregation solar projects now. And that is one of the common themes that we see is a true sense of stewardship to take care of this earth.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Thank you all for all that you do.
You guys are great,
So-
yeah.
This week, we have looked at the present and into the future very much. Next week, we're going to look at the past and bring it into the present with a presentation by Jamie Ferguson, who is a senior historian at Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, who has written perhaps the definitive biography of Josiah Henson. Josiah Henson was the enslaved African who was held at a plantation just up Old Georgetown Road at Tilden Lane. And he became the model for Uncle Tom in Uncle Tom's Cabin. That novel was a driving force toward the Civil War. When Abraham Lincoln met the author of that novel, Harriet Beecher Stowe, he said to her, "Oh, so you're the little lady who has given me this war." So this will be a presentation by Jamie Ferguson that's co-sponsored by the Racial Justice Steering Committee, represented by Rebecca Leo here at church, in anticipation of our field trip up to the Henson Museum on May 21st. So come next week, educate yourselves, and then join us for the field trip on the 21st. And as usual, we thank you all for being here, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Be well, stay away from the pollen.